Thanks for listening to the Awakened Life podcast. I've been your host, Scott Landis. Hey, are you feeling overwhelmed and stressed out? It could be that you're out of balance or have a misalignment of your time and priorities. This month at Awakened Life Academy, we're featuring the Total Freedom Life Wheel exercise designed to help you uncover what might be off balance in your work, life, and other priorities. And then it helps you realign your priorities to your purpose. Check out the full training video and free download at wheel.awakenlife.com. That's wheel.awakenedlife.com for free access. Don't put this personal growth opportunity off. Go get it now and start to experience the freedom that balance can bring to your life. Go to wheel.awakenlife.com. Welcome to the Awaken Life podcast with Scott Landis, and today my guest is Adam Bedar, and he is the co-founder of OY6 Capital. That stands for over what? Something about watching your six, right? What? OY? What's the OY?
On your
six. I knew it. He spent some years, 15 years in sales prior to where he's at now in his OY6 Capital business. He had led both tank and infantry units in 225 combat missions. If you're watching the video, he's got a really sweet helmet there on his credenza. Check that out. He was in and around the Iraq area. Adam earned his master's degree in business from University of Southern California and his undergraduate from UC Santa Barbara. When not spending time with his wife and two children, Adam likes to torture himself with pre-dawn morning workouts. With a couple of kids and being married 12 years, he's one of the people that we commonly say, you used to have hobbies because you're just busy, you're building a business and you're married, you got kids, you're doing the whole thing. He sacrifices sleep to take care of his vitality and look as good as he looks. And let's see, he's active in various charities focused on helping fellow veterans who are suffering from mental health issues. As I mentioned, a veteran from the U.S. Army. Adam, thank you so much for being on the Awaken Life podcast. Thanks for spending some time with me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. It's a pleasure.
And we were talking a little bit before we got going here that a lot of times guests I have on the show are entrepreneurs that we can kind of relate to what their service is. A lot of the people listening to this are not going to be your client. There's no like special offer, go to this funnel and, check out the free lead magnet. There may be, but you do have a perspective. And literally just the episode before this with Michael Stansbury, we were talking about having a legacy vision perspective. And so there's sort of a theme going on here. So here we are with you. I think one of the things that we'll be able to glean from, me and others that are listening is thinking ahead. We were just talking about, and we can just pick it up right there. We were talking about kind of like when you're building your personal credit, like I've been talking to my 18-year-old who's almost 19. Let's start working on that, building some credit. As a business, if you're growing, like I'm not quite there yet, but I have friends and other business owners who have, got this small to medium-sized business. We have a small to medium-sized business, been around for 10 years or so, and starting to grow. The kind of financing that you do is way beyond where we're at, but you have some advice for us to start thinking ahead, just like my 18-year-old needs to be thinking 10 years ahead for buying a house. So what is that? What are some of the things that you would recommend to somebody who is thinking further ahead in their business?
Right. I think any entrepreneur, especially as you're starting a venture, you got your 5-meter target and those things are eating you up every day. But I think it's always important to kind of take a step back and look at where the ultimate goal is and set base camps where you get to certain places and then you can kind of reassess. In the military, we took tactical pauses. So even when things are going on, you could be in the middle of a firefight. At a certain time, you kind of have to take a step back and say, okay, put your head up, look around, see what's going on. And financing is one of those things I think a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with. And when they finally lift their head up and start looking at it, a lot of times it's when you might not be the most financeable or the most credit worthy. And so I always encourage entrepreneurs to start thinking about those things sooner. When I went out to get my first car, I was in college and had a job, and it was to the point where I needed to have my own vehicle. And I got turned down for a car loan, not because I had bad credit necessarily, because I just didn't have any credit. And so I don't care what the size of business that you have, it's always good to go out and meet your local banker. These banks are set up in communities and they have requirements in order to get the FDIC accreditation that allows them to take deposits from individuals. They have to lend a certain amount of dollars to that local community and small businesses. In return for that, the government will often guarantee some of those programs. So some of the best loans, I'll have clients, potential clients come to see me, and if they fit within those programs, a subsidized financing would be through the Small Business Association. They are very favorable terms, and you can go to any bank that has an SBA program, and generally the qualification, it takes a while. It's a lot of check the boxes like any government program, but in the end, that lender is secured through a guarantee of the federal government, so they're more likely to get you that loan. Once you start taking that loan and paying that loan back, you're starting to create credit and show capacity. There's 5 C's to lending. And so one of the things is when you go out and ask for a much larger loan, if you've had the ability to pay off a smaller loan, you now have that history. And it's much easier to build character, capacity. And then when you really need a loan, they can say, well, this person's taken that loan and they've paid it back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think a lot of us might be, just living so on a hamster wheel in the moment and thinking about this stuff now. Like maybe we think, oh, that would be a good idea, or maybe I should, but we're like putting it off. But it makes a lot of sense. So far, what I'm hearing. By the way, you gotta unpack a couple of things. I always take anything that's said and assume third graders listening. So you mentioned 5-meter target, you mentioned 5 C's to lending. We'll have to have you explain those things, but so far you're saying like it's a good idea to, as far as at least a step or two, to plan ahead, to go to your local banker, get a relationship. They have some mandates to lend, and there's some favorable programs. Get a SBA loan, get a line of credit, and pay it off. Even if you don't think you need that, well, hopefully you don't need that, but do it so that you start to develop a credit history. So yeah, fill in any blanks there.
That's exactly the easiest way to do it. Right now, with some of the concerns about the overall economy, especially on the small business side, we're seeing the consumer get a little weaker. Banks aren't lending as much. The credit window's tighter. But one of the things they love is the deposit account. So even if you're an entrepreneur and you're starting up and you don't need a lot of money, just the fact of you putting your checking account, getting a credit card through that local bank, that is really valuable for that banker. And now you're creating a relationship. And until banks go to fully autonomous decision-making, there are emotions and personalities and all those things go into it. And so if you get into a situation where you really do need help, having that relationship with that individual banker at that local level is absolutely essential. They're a great partner to have. They're incentivized to work with you. And again, a lot of people say numbers and financing, I don't want to get involved. I think a lot of and if your banker can't make it simple and easy for you, go find a different banker. That's my thing. They're just like every profession, there's ones that really know it. It's not all that complicated, and they'll be able to plug in the right product for you. So you don't necessarily have to know exactly what you need. You just start building a rapport, have a conversation, and then they should plug you into the right product that'll help your business. And it doesn't even need to be a loan necessarily for you to have a working line of credit. You might need it for purchase order financing. You could do it for receivables. There's a number of ways that you can provide different collateral to that lender to have them look at it and go, wow, this business we can support. And so they really are there, that front line kind of partner to help you really be able to scale your business a little bit quicker, right? I'm not saying go out and get more debt than you can service. And really at the bank level, they're not going to provide you more capital than you can repay. And so again, I think they could be a great partner, somebody you just want to start talking to, get to know. So if that time comes where you have a customer that says, hey, I've got a big purchase order for you, you at least have someone you can talk to that knows you, understands your business, and could potentially help you solve that. Because a lot of times it's just a cash flow issue. You need money for a short period of time to get you into this next sale, and there's products for that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so and then just real quick, just to what did you mean by 5-meter target? What's that?
Yeah, I apologize. There's a lot of acronyms in the military, and so the 5-meter target means you've got to take care of the enemy that's 5 meters away before you can take care of the enemy that's 5 miles away. Right.
Gotcha.
And
Okay.
so the problem that military unit, I won't get too much into it, but if you focus just on the front line, you may miss the army behind those 5 soldiers. And so while you're busy tackling that, that's really a distraction. There's a big thing. You should have already picked up, moved, and gone somewhere else.
Got it. Okay. So just thinking maybe a couple steps ahead. And then the 5 C's to lending, what are those?
Character, capacity, capital, collateral, and conditions. Character being the most important. And there's a couple ways to build character. One is by taking on capacity. So I've had loans, I've paid them off. The other way I see character, and this is another investment that an entrepreneur often puts off in making. We're so busy running our businesses. We're so busy just trying to get through the day and get things going that oftentimes we just shove receipts in a drawer. And then at the end of the year, we go, oh, we've got to figure out. And QuickBooks is a great tool to use. But when you go in to ask for that loan, because after a certain period of time, they're going to want to see some historical financials. And one way to lose that character is to bring in financials that don't follow generally accepted accounting principles, short for GAAP. And so one of the things I encourage entrepreneurs to do is you don't have to go hire a big CPA firm. You don't have to go hire an auditor, but you should hire a bookkeeper very early on, if only you hire them to set up the buckets for which you can easily plug expenses and income and things into the right buckets. And then I always say it's good to bring them in, if you could, monthly to close out the month, quarterly if you can't do monthly, but at least on an annual basis, so that when you show up to start asking, when you really need to ask for money and a sizable amount of money, they're going to want to see your financials. And the first thing they look at, if everything's in order and it looks like it's in place, the conversation can continue. There's so often, even large companies that might be 20 or 30 million in revenues, when we start talking and looking at that business and they're looking to grow beyond what that local bank can do, where maybe they need a $5 million loan or more, which is what we provide, it basically comes in a shoebox. And it instantly, that we look at that and go, oh my gosh, this is going to be a lot of work. And we really can't trust anything they say until we spend the time to go through and audit and review and go through those. So I think it's well worth the investment, and bookkeepers aren't expensive, to at least set up where you can put things in the right buckets. You can record things the right way so that in the event things begin to take off, someone later on who you'll have to hire to come in and look at it, at least you've created a lot less work for them. And it's just as easy as kind of tying things out and cleaning things up a little bit.
Yeah. And if you're listening and you're like, okay, where do I get that person? Shoot me an email, scott@landis360.com. I can definitely direct you to some people for that. But when you say at least get it set up, what you mean is you don't have to necessarily hire a bookkeeper ongoing. At least get it set up so that you have the right buckets in place for generally accepted practices and accounting practices. And then from there, usually we can kind of handle it from there. If it's all set up in QuickBooks and we just have to say, okay, which bucket are we putting this in? We can usually figure that out. If you're having trouble with that, maybe you do want the full-time bookkeeper, but at least get those buckets set up. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I think you clarified it greatly. Is find a bookkeeper, and there's plenty of them that know your industry, because they're going to come in with that level of experience and say, here's the 7 entries that you're going to have 90% of the time. And they're going to walk through. And I encourage people to take, videos, do it on a screen share, even if that bookkeeper comes into the office, because inevitably every month or whenever you go to settle up your books, you're going to go, I remember we talked about this particular entry, and when I have an entry like this, I need to do this, and you can go back to that. And so you can, in essence, they're creating a template for you that's going to handle 90% of your entries. And then what you can do is all those other entries you don't know about is you can, if you're like me, you try to Google and figure it out. But if not, you just put it in a bucket that says ask accountant. Then at the end of the quarter or annually or whenever, that person, whoever you hire to help you, if you need to, knows where to look and can easily make rules and set up things for that. QuickBooks is great. It can take you through. I've seen companies at 50 million in revenues still on QuickBooks. Not ideal, but it's a very useful tool, and it gets more user friendly every year.
Yeah, I've been using QuickBooks since I started Landis 360 in 2012, and I accidentally stepped into the right thing. Obviously, I didn't know until right now how much I did accidentally step into the right thing. But yeah, I got set up from day one correctly. And I have in all caps asked my accountant bucket, because I do put stuff in there and like, okay, I'm not sure, put that in there, and yeah, I get that clarified later, and then I do have those things reviewed and get it taken care of at least once a year. I'm just now, actually, interestingly enough, coincidentally, just was having an email exchange with an accountant about getting on a quarterly basis now. So I'm moving in the right direction, Adam. I'm working on it.
Well, and again, there's no necessarily right or wrong. It's just going to save you time and money the sooner you put those things in place. And again, I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, and they all have different goals, but I think every business needs to have a BHAG, and that's a big, hairy, audacious goal. And so you've got your short-term, medium-term, long-term goals. You've got certain things. But if we don't have a goal that we're striving to get, something that's probably not attainable, and start backtracking our base camps to that, then you're really missing out on the potential of all your sweat equity you're putting into this business. And if you're building your business the right way, and you've got a good culture behind it, and you're growing it, and it's a good product, and you're solving a problem, there's a lot of businesses that don't do any of those things, and they continue to grow. And so why shortchange yourself and put restrictions on that. And one of those things is, at a certain point, if you can't grow with as fast as your business is growing, I see a lot of people sell a business where they easily could be in a position to retain that business, run it, be very happy in that business. And if they do 3 more years, now they're setting up a return for themselves that's generational wealth. And so rather than have the business get too big to control or not have that ability, if you set these things up, and again, it's not a huge investment. I'm not saying go get a CPA or audit firm day one. But if you just do those little things right, then you're going to find yourself in a situation where you don't need to bring in someone to take over the business.
Yeah, I mean, this is so encouraging. So, I mean, what I'm hearing you say is, the common sense isn't commonly practiced, right? I heard Tony Robbins say that one time. Most people, the best practices are never rocket science, right? I help people a lot with relationships and marriage. I've helped save a lot of marriages, and none of the things that I teach couples is rocket science, right? It's just most people don't do the best practices. So if you do the foundational stuff, like Vince Lombardi said, hey, this is a football. That's how he started, right? The season. So you're saying, and I want to real quick get into the context of who you are and why we should listen to you, because you're dealing with companies. If you get to the 50 million or 100 million or even beyond that, this is where you might get financing is from Adam. So he knows what he's talking about. But for us smaller companies, getting started, and small to medium sized companies, what I hear you saying is most people, they might even like succeed through the stages of business in spite of these not having these best practices. So if you are mindful of a few basic things that are common sense, best practices, they don't take a lot of time, they don't take a lot of investment, you are setting yourself up well. And I like how you said it, don't miss out on all the sweat equity. It's like if you're spending your blood, sweat, and tears and maybe sacrificing time from family and other things, hobbies, don't miss out on, like, why would you not take the little baby steps to make this stuff happen? That's so encouraging to hear you say that. Would you put it any other way?
Yeah, well, when you were talking, it came to mind. I used to mow my own lawn, and I got enjoyment from mowing my own lawn and tending to the garden. And it's interesting because as a young kid, that's how I made money. So I went around, I grew up in a very small town. So I got my bike, wagon, would load up whatever I had, lawnmower, and I'd go around, and I probably had 10 to 12 properties that I would help maintain to make money. And I remember when I was toiling in that ground, I said, I'm never mowing my lawn. And here I am mowing my lawn. And then one of my colleagues said, have you ever figured out how much your time is really worth? And I started thinking, and I said, okay. And so if you really enjoy mowing your lawn, mow it. But if not, spend the $40 to have your gardener come and mow it. Right. And, coming up in very modest means, $40 today is still a lot of money to me, even though I'm lending millions of dollars. And so I really had to change my perspective. And I think that goes along with some of the recommendations, certainly, that your podcast brings, is know what you're good at, do that, know what you like to do. And those other things, if you have someone else do them, it's that time you're spending, you can go do something else to grow your business. And so I have to constantly remind myself to say, is what I'm doing the best use of my time? And if not, I need to find someone else to do it. And if I really don't like to do it, I need to find someone else to do it. Yeah,
well said. I love that. All right. So how often, okay, so I go a layer deeper. I just wanted to give that context of who you are and what your business is. So you do lending to larger companies for the purpose of certain things. Can you fill in those gaps?
Sure. So when you talk about financial services and lending, there's 100 different products. There's 100 different verticals and segments. The easiest way that I think I can describe it is we are a secured lender, and I'll unpack this, a secured lender to middle market companies in capital intensive industries. So to unpack that, secured lender, I'm providing debt, right? So in the other form of capital is equity, and then there's quasi preferred equity. But equity is, I've got a startup company, I've got a really good idea. It's just an idea. I don't have a product, I don't have sales. Someone else thinks it's a good idea. So I give them a portion of my business, an ownership stake in my business, and they give me money that I don't have to repay that I can use to grow the business. So that's equity. That's
Is
not
is
where we play.
is
Go ahead.
angel investor in this mix? Is that something different?
Equity. Yep. Same thing. You'll hear of
Okay.
angel investors.
Okay.
They're putting, $1 into the company, hoping that it makes $10,
Hmm.
knowing that if they make 10 investments, 8 of them will fail, but 2
Hmm.
may be moonshots.
And that's like a Shark Tank kind of guy, right? Is that the same thing?
Although Shark Tank's gotten, we love it. My daughter's 9, my son's 7. They love watching it. I think
Hmm.
it's an amazing tribute to entrepreneurs.
Hmm.
They've gotten a little beyond, right? They're always asking, what are your sales? And most of those products have been in operation a few years.
Uh-huh.
And what they really need is either management or leadership or something else. But
Okay.
the original Shark Tank was that idea. Hey, I've got this shotgun bobber. I've got people who said they'll buy it, but I can't manufacture. I have no money to manufacture it. So
Hmm.
that's angel investor.
Okay. So that's not you though.
No. So debt capital is I'm going to give you money, and for that, you're going to promise to pay me back. And the idea is I'm going to give you money and I'm going to charge you for that. And you're going to take that dollar and you're going to make $1 more than what I charge you. So if I charge you 10 cents, you're going to make $1.30. You pay me that $1.10 back. And
Hmm.
that can be in the form of, a loan, a working capital line, a bond. There's various instruments. Generally, what we do are loans.
Okay.
And so our loans tend to be amortizing, which means I give you $1 today and you pay me a little bit back. So think of a car loan or a home loan. But there are situations where we provide financing in advance of payment up to 2 years. So we say, hey, you're going to have to build out this project. It's going to create revenue. But until it creates revenue, you obviously can't pay me back. So we can do some sort of construction financing. Then when you've built your revenue generating or cost savings project, you can start paying us back. So payment terms can change, but ultimately we're giving you money, you're paying us back the principal plus interest.
Hmm.
And when I say middle market, generally these companies are in excess of 5 million in EBITDA on an annual basis to about 100 or sometimes 200 million in EBITDA. And they tend to be capital intensive. So they're buying machinery, plant, equipment, or building any of those types of things, which is
Hmm.
different than a cash flow loan, which is based off of I don't have those assets, right? So I'm lending, I get a lien in your asset. If you don't pay me back, then at least I have something I could go sell and recoup my losses,
Hmm.
which isn't necessarily our profile on the type of risk we take, but
Hmm.
that is what a traditional bank would do. You stop paying, then they go right away, repo the equipment and sell it. So if you don't pay on your
Hmm.
car, don't pay on your house, very similar to that.
Hmm.
And then a working capital loan is for companies that maybe aren't capital intensive. I need money to go hire more employees, to pay for more software or seat licenses to grow my business. And then somebody would underwrite the accounts receivable, the inventory, and the enterprise value of that business. Again, something separate from what we do.
Okay. All right. So when people come to you, are you because it's a pretty specific thing. If they're not in the right, 5 million to 100 million, if they're not looking to grow, machinery or manufacturing or building or something like that, then they're not necessarily your fit. So do you end up turning away a lot and referring them out, or suggesting, hey, you should go, if they're a smaller company, go to a bank, or go to a different kind of lender? Is that happening a lot in your day, in your week, your month?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the finance community is like the insurance community or the legal field. Everyone's got a certain niche, a place they
Mm,
can fill. And as we run into business that doesn't necessarily fit, we certainly have referral networks we can put out
mm-hmm,
and put people in place. And a lot of times I'll say, so the industry we're in is $1 trillion a year is lent to business. And I would say 70 to 80% of that is pretty efficient.
mm,
We like to operate in that inefficient space. So these are good companies that have either had an oopsie
mm,
or they're growing faster than maybe what their traditional lender would want to do.
mm,
And that goes back to kind of my why. I love helping. I've always been curious about business. I never really realized I had this entrepreneurial spirit, although I always had kind of a side hustle as a kid,
mm-hmm,
until I got into this industry 18 years ago. And I realized, wow, I just love the strategy and thought process of business. And what a cool job that I get to talk to business leaders every day about their business in a variety of industries. And so I mean, we probably refer out more business than we take, just because it is like those where, hey, I can be a good fit here. If not, I know a partner who likes this credit profile, likes this risk profile, and would be willing to do a transaction of this size. So there's oftentimes where I'll get entrepreneurs who will be referred to me for one reason or another. It may or may not fit, and I'm able to pass them along to someone else that doesn't know. And I think smaller businesses generally, it's a less efficient market. I mean,
mm-hmm,
the publicly traded companies you see, again, 80% of those, it's very efficient, right? I can't add value. And they don't really need to go outside their 10 relationships. But
mm-hmm,
for an entrepreneur, oftentimes you can be discouraged when you go out and say, oh, these two people won't lend me money. There's plenty of people that love focusing on those earlier businesses. You may not be able to dictate the exact terms you want, but if, again, you take that loan or that working capital line or that equity in an earlier phase, it's going to get you to that next level, and you can pay off those terms and create something that's a little more advantageous. So again, I always look at credit as this is just a snapshot in time. In a year, I may be doing better. And I've seen a lot of companies not take the capital they needed because they thought the terms weren't great, and a year later wish they would have taken it. I always tell my clients it's better to say, I probably shouldn't have taken that capital. It wasn't a great rate, or I could do something better now. But I always tell people the best time to borrow is when you don't necessarily really need it. Because if
mm-hmm,
you're going out to get a loan or buy it, bring in an equity partner when you really need it, those are the worst terms you can ever create. So
mm,
sometimes thinking counterintuitively is a great thing to do. And the example I do, we lend in the oil and gas space. I know it's a very controversial space. We don't lend to
mm,
all oil and gas companies, but they've always had the mentality of when things are good. And right now they're really good. Exxon just had the most profitable quarter,
mm,
and I could tell you why and all those things. But the reality is now they'll say, oh, we want to spend cash. We don't want to borrow. Well, inevitably, oil and gas is a cycle. It will go down. And then
mm,
when they look to borrow, Exxon will have no problem. But what if you're 1/10 the size of Exxon? What if you're 1/100th the size of Exxon? You're going to struggle to find financing when you need it. So again, it's counterintuitive. Why would I bring on debt? I it costs money and I've got all this cash. Again, if you're looking forward and looking in the future and going, what are some of the roadblocks? What are some of the things out of my control that could impact my business? And how do I insulate myself? That's one of the ways you can do it.
I love that. So that sort of I want to bring it kind of circle back to where we kind of kicked off to that smaller entrepreneur who's planning ahead and is asking the question like, okay, I get this idea that it's a good idea to plan ahead, but I'm not in that headspace. I'm not thinking about, like, I have no idea what's happening next month. Thinking 10 years from now, like it's kind of beyond me. But here you are, you have some lenses, you have a viewpoint that we can't see. So it'd be great to find out what you might say. And so the question to answer is like, what are some things that you would suggest that I would get lending for? Like, I can't even think why I would need lending, right? So I think if you can answer that for somebody who is a solo entrepreneur, who doesn't have a ton of overhead, you know, who isn't, you know, it's more of a services business. Like what kind of reason would I go to my banker and start to build a relationship and say, when they ask the question, well, what do you need the money for? Like, what am I going to tell them? Like, can I have like 3 to 5 things that you might suggest?
Yeah, I mean, I think I personally, when someone comes to us and I say, you know, that's a valid question. What do you need the money for? In case of a rainy day is always, I value that business leader who says, listen, things are going great. I'm going to take out this line of credit. I know there may be a fee associated with having it open, but I'd rather have it open and have the ability to draw on it if I need it than not. And so if you work with a bank, there'll be a non-utilization fee generally assigned to that line of credit. But again, you're giving the bank something really valuable, deposits. And so for that, you're going to get certain things in return. And so if you don't have a need for the capital and you don't expect to expand your business, that cost may be too great. You can do a cost benefit analysis. But if you're not thinking about expanding your business, if your business is really doing that well and you're not expanding it, then maybe you're leaving some money on the table. And so I'd encourage that person. You've got to go. I've got a trainer who's a coach. I've got a marriage counselor who's a coach. And we call it getting our oil changed, right? We go see before our marriage gets off the tracks too much. And anyone who's been married for 12 years knows there's various tracks you get on. We just go in and get some advice, right? And oftentimes men and women see things differently. And when you go in there, it's like you've got a translator and they're like, she's saying this, you're saying the same thing. And you're like, oh, I feel great. And you leave and you're like, best money I've ever spent. So
Right.
I would say you should have a business coach, somebody who's outside looking in, that's helping you decide, you know, maybe you should expand, maybe you shouldn't expand, maybe you need to shut this business down, maybe it's not a good business, but that banker can help you along that way. And then anytime you get into a financial circle, that banker has intermediaries, right? So I was just at an M&A meeting. We had bankers, we had non-bankers, we had private equity sponsors, we had tax attorneys, we had business attorneys, and someone said, hey, I've got an owner. He's getting older. He's got a good little business. It's about $1 million in EBITDA a year. Family wants nothing to do with it. He's okay being part of the business. He's got a nice Rolodex, but he really wants someone to take it over. He doesn't have a lot of employees, but he doesn't want to see them have trouble. Well, now
That's
that
such a
banker
common
who knows
situation.
you
Yeah.
comes in and says, hey, you're running a tow truck company. This guy has a tow truck company in one county over. Maybe there's a connection there. And so I think it's always important that you have relationships in different areas of your business where those call them thought leaders or business connectors who are in the finance space can bring you potential opportunities. And as lenders, we see a variety of opportunities that come across that aren't just necessarily for lending debt. They could be equity and vice versa. So I think it's important. And listen, I'm a non-bank lender. So my success is based on the fact that bankers aren't perfect and that not all situations are helped by a bank, but so I'm not a huge advocate of, yeah, you have to go get debt, but it's smart. You should think about it.
Mhm.
And again, the banker's there to help you. They'll tell you, hey, this isn't a good deal. If you get to this stage or you get to this stage, then come on back. I
Yeah.
found most community bankers to be pretty good integrity, high integrity people.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, and what's that advice worth? Like, hey, you're not a good risk right now.
Yeah.
Not looking like something I want to invest in. But if you did a couple of these things and then come back and see
Yeah.
me, like the amp that information that you just got, like, what's that worth? Like, that's free. He gave it to you. You could have paid a consultant or a coach for that. But yeah, that's probably a clue as to a couple of things you might want to do in your business. And so what I also uh, heard you say, you were at a mergers and acquisitions meeting, you said, right? And there was a bunch of people in the room. These are people that us smaller entrepreneurs would consider a dream team of advisors. I'm thinking, like, if we could get in the room of these people and just like listen in, or have them more, and even better, start to building rapport and relationship with, it'd be really, really valuable. And like you said, you never know where that's going to go, but they know people that know people, so just by being in that room and having a relationship with a banker who knows a guy who's selling his tow truck business, um, he would have the opportunity plus the ability to fund the opportunity. Did I interpret that right? Like, if you have that relationship and you've been working with that banker and you have developed some rapport and some credit history, would that be a scenario that would happen?
Absolutely, because the bank has the history with the one tow, in this example, a tow truck company, sees that it's a profitable, well-run business. It's been around. They've got the cash deposits of that business. They don't want to lose that. And so one of the ways is if they can find someone else to
Wow.
buy it who's also in the bank, and then the credit committee for that would be really easy. We have two bank customers who want to merge.
Mhm.
It's tough to get transactions through banks these days. That one would be tough for them to not do. And so
Wow.
unless it hits it, when you get a bigger company, sometimes it gets past the whole limit of the local level and it's got to go regional or national. But again,
Mhm.
for a big part of your audience, anytime you can get in a room where you've got these intermediaries that are looking for businesses to provide services, whether it's accounting or tax or, just contract law, those people have a lot of connections, and I just value those connections. You never know where something's going to happen, and might be able to help this person on this deal and they remember you and help you on this deal. And there's nothing like a warm lead where somebody says, hey, I know this person, they're a good person, talk to them about this. And
Mhm.
those you get one free conversation with all those things. And you know our business here, well, I've been doing the same thing. The first
Mhm.
15 years was at a big fund. And 18 months ago, we raised capital and started our own fund. And so some of those things that we have to do as this newer fund, I've got a lot of one call value out of it without having to write a big check. So
Mhm.
never discount that one meeting where you might get a piece of information that's worth much more than the cup of coffee it costs you to have it.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of this is just thinking at a higher level. I think, you know, if you're listening and you're like me, you're gleaming some different level thinking from Adam, and how do connected people think? How do wealthy people think? How do they think differently? And so just like changing your thinking, changing your perspective, changing the way you see things, you start to see opportunities that you didn't see before, and that's really cool. I'm getting that from you because one thing I know about you that I've learned about you is your love for business and strategy and creating being creative and solving problems. You love talking to people about this. So I'm just tapping into your purpose and your why behind what you do, and hoping that it will ooze out onto my audience here. So I appreciate that opportunity to do that. And if you're listening, I want you to, I'm confident you've gotten at least one thing. You're like, oh gosh, I need to do that. I need to write that down. I want to encourage you to write it down, take action, because if you just listen to it and it goes out the other ear, then nothing has happened. And Adam's invested his time here, I think, expecting that seeds might be planted. I want you to write something down. What is something that you're taking away from this podcast episode that you want to implement, and put a date on it, make a commitment to get it done, decide that you're going to do it. And then our time here will be well spent. Adam, besides that, is there anything else you want to leave the audience with as we wrap it up here?
I think I just will echo your last comment. I think journaling is really important. Specifically, I have a gratitude journal. It's actually called the Gratitude Journal.
Yeah, I've
And
heard about that.
there's a great professor, and during my time at USC, he came in and spoke, and he's an amazing, phenomenal doctor, Glenn Fox. And at the time, he wasn't all that well known, but Pete Carroll had this program where, how do we get these athletes more physical, and what do we do? And Pete was one of those brilliant minds, and still is in football. And he said, what are we doing with the mind? The body is one thing, the mind's another. And Glenn Fox has a really unique take. I think at the time he was the only one, or the first one, to write his PhD based on gratitude. And there's been several studies after it, but one of the things I encourage all of the listeners to do, it's made a huge change in my life, is I journal every morning, and there's several different things I do, but the number one most important thing is I write down at least 6 things I'm grateful for. And I won't bore you. If you want to see the stats and just the amazingness behind it, you can look up Glenn Fox, but 6 things you're grateful for. 10 is even better, but 6 is the gold standard. You do 6 and it's just phenomenal. And listen, I'm in the struggle as an entrepreneur. There's all these things and everything else. It's the first thing I do when I sit down in my chair. And it's made a ton of difference. So you left off with journaling. I'll tell you, you have to do it. If you don't write it down, it doesn't happen. But more importantly, let's write down all the things we're grateful for. And we all have plenty of things to be grateful for. And then every once in a while I go back and read it, and I'm like, oh man, wow. Some of those things I was grateful for, some of those things I prayed for, that they all happened. And it just re-encourages that focus. In fact, this year I started my 9-year-old, 7-year-old, and wife, we all do the gratitude journal. They might not do it every day, but I saw my daughter last night before bed writing in it. And nice. I think that's the one thing I'll sell you. Those things, do them. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. I don't know if you, I know we're at the top of the hour. If there's a little bit more time, is there to talk about your kind of your charitable side, the things you do with veterans? Can you just mention that real quick before we end?
Sure. I think so I'm someone who suffered from PTSD, and fortunately I had a partner who was able to identify that and bring it to my life. So I didn't think I did, and I definitely did. And so I was able to get help. There's 22 veterans that kill themselves every single day. Mental health, veteran or not, is a huge issue, and it's not getting any better. So one of the things we did when we decided to start OY6, right, because there's an opportunity to go work for another large fund or group, we really wanted to have a living legacy. We thought that this industry was aging. It wasn't very diverse, and so we thought we could do it. And the third thing is to give back with no agenda. And so one of our sponsors that we work with, and every transaction we do, we give back to charity. And so this year it's Wounded Warriors, and specifically they have a Warriors to Work program. And so that takes severely wounded warriors or their caretakers and places them in meaningful work. There's 22 counselors throughout the U.S., and many businesses struggle. We're a veteran-owned business. We struggle to find veterans that we can work, but part of the mental health issue is, these guys and gals come back from overseas and they struggle to fit in. The military culture is an honor culture. You do things because it's the right thing to do, and then you get in this ego and pride-filled culture, and it just doesn't work. And they go out for jobs, and people want to hire them, and they might not be good at it. And so it's a mess. So part of what we do is give back to those charities to find jobs for veterans. So I believe one of the big things you can do is there's more veteran organizations and money out there than veterans know how to find or go seek to find. So I always encourage people, hey, if you're looking to hire, I can send you can post it, these different veteran organizations. But more importantly, when you see a veteran, I'm always counseling, mentoring to a handful of veterans who are just out trying to do the best they can. And when I can get them gainfully employed and something that follows their why. Now, sometimes you just got to get them a job. They just need to pay the bills. So we'll get them into that. But walking with them into their why and finding a career for them and not just a job, and a career that can pay the bills and allow them something, it's the most rewarding thing to do. And so that's a lot of what we do is around that. And so portion of every deal, portion of annual revenues goes to that. And then the other thing we do that I encourage entrepreneurs to do is anytime, again, we're a transactional group, and so there's commissions in a lot of the transactions we do. And so part of that commission, we allow our employees to pick the charity that they want to support. And so whether it's veterans, whether it's pets, whether, I don't care who it is, I think it's had an amazing impact on our business, because when you're working long hours, it's great. Hey, we're working long hours. We're in this foxhole together. We're really doing well. But when there's a greater purpose, it really does change the culture and kind of the ethos of a company. And so I know that we get a lot out of it. And then once you get somebody into giving, it's just amazing feel you feel. So we do kind of quarterly events where we get out of the office during one of the days and actually go do something, right? Physically do something. It's one thing to write a check, but to physically do something. So that's been part of this company. And man, it just really makes us want to drive to do more. Yeah,
dude, that's really cool. I love it. All right. Well, Adam Bednar, thank you so much from OY6 Capital, OY6capital.com. If you're wanting to reach out to Adam, you can find him at OY6capital.com, and we'll have links in the show notes. Should we put your email address in there or just go to the website?
Yeah, email's great.
Okay.
And I'm fairly responsive. And again, happy to put, if it's not something for me, happy to put you in touch with the right people. I love doing it. So hope this was helpful for you, Scott, and your listeners. Yes. And I've enjoyed your podcast. I'm a little late to it, but I've had a handful of them, and at least in each one, I've pulled several key things from. So it's an amazing community that you've generated, and really good thought leadership around so many things that I thought about and that I haven't thought about, and now I'm thinking about. So awesome. I encourage you. I love it. Keep doing it.
Yeah, thank you. And yep, this episode is definitely added to the list. So I really appreciate your time. Thanks so much, Adam.
Thanks, Scott. Have a blessed day.
Thanks for listening to the Awakened Life podcast. I've been your host, Scott Landis. Hey, are you feeling overwhelmed and stressed out? It could be that you're out of balance or have a misalignment of your time and priorities. This month at Awaken Life Academy, we're featuring the Total Freedom Life Wheel exercise designed to help you uncover what might be off balance in your work, life, and other priorities. And then it helps you realign your priorities to your purpose. Check out the full training video and free download at wheel.awakenlife.com. That's wheel.awakenedlife.com for free access. Don't put this personal growth opportunity off. Go get it now and start to experience the freedom that balance can bring to your life. Go to wheel.awakenlife.com.